Hello everyone and welcome to the SBK Betting Podcast. As you can see, we're all together because there's a very special Royal Ascot preview that's going to be recorded after this very quick scurry through Saturday's special podcast for this weekend, because we are dedicated to every single weekend, even though we have a major festival coming up. So Ross, TC, great to see you in person off the back of what's been a really good run of form of late, and pleased to have seen that Jumbie went in the John of God at 9-4, beat both of your selections. We had that rare occasion where you were agreed on everything, and you were right with Midnight Affair and Nap for Ross. Next best for TC, correct?
Correct.
Yes. We could do more of those. They could work. Let's see what happens this weekend.
TC keeps sending them over. I'll keep sending them.
Well, you've actually been in the same place today to look at each other's notes, but I'm sure there's one line of thinking that I think we're all nearly going to agree with when it comes to this weekend, because obviously we're looking ahead to Royal Ascot, so it's a slightly lesser weekend, maybe a few afterthoughts, but the Scurry Stakes has always and traditionally been a very good race for 3-year-olds at the sprint race at Sandown down the 5 furlongs, and that's what we're going to focus on. Great State heads it from a betting perspective. Oisin Murphy, Richard Fahey teaming up. This horse has been on a real roll of late. Tajala, who's unbeaten for David Egan. Roger Varian is in this. Padika, who's been all over this country and France as well. In the lineup, William Buick, who's going to have quite a big week with George Bowie next week. They team up and they've got Katie Content, Yashat, Kantakan and Havana Puzi and a couple of others to hold fort of the Scurry Stakes. So we'll start with Ross, because he landed the nap last week. Scurry Stakes, not a huge amount on offer in terms of depth, and I think there is one standout. I have to agree with Great State, and the ratings say that as well.
Yeah, I think Great Stakes is the horse to beat. I'm just a really big fan of Tajala. He went into my notebook after his debut in April last year. The form of that race hasn't worked out, but I think sometimes you have to trust your eye, and he looked wildly impressive to me. He travelled really powerfully, finished his race off really well. I mean, Andrea could barely pull him up, went right up into the hill at Newmarket. Wasn't seen since. In my final race at TVPs last year for 2-year-olds, I did a don't forget section, and he was top of the list. I thought he was really impressive. Made a really good comeback at Hamilton. Travelled powerfully, had to switch, finished the race off well. I think there's every chance there's more to come. I mean, that was the first run for 388 days, so fitness I think will bring him on. But also that was just his second start, so he's going to have plenty more to give. Great State is far more exposed, albeit he's only a 3-year-old. And just at the prices, in a race that I haven't got a huge opinion on, I was just keen on Tajala. David Egan going up better ride, I thought was notable. He could have gone to York. I just think Tajala's got plenty going for him in a race where there's probably one horse to beat.
He gets that £3 weight from a Great State because of his listed win, can help, especially in a sprint and what's going to be fast ground as well.
Yeah, I mean he's got it to do, because Silent Words was beaten far more comfortably by Great State than Tajala managed, but just think Tajala didn't have the run of the race at Hamilton. I think he had to switch, not ideal to get a run. Like I said, first run 388 days. Be no surprise if Great State wins, but sometimes you just have to follow your gut, and Tajala is a horse I really like, and hopefully he'll keep on impressing.
Yeah, the Roger Varian team going great guns, unbeaten for a reason. I just think he's the price he is because he has that sort of unbeaten record to his name, and as Ross has rightly said, there is a form line here with Great State and Silent Words, and yes, Great State's beaten fair and square, but he seems to just be really progressive this year. Not exactly discouraging as a 2-year-old, but he's clearly taking a bit of time, gelding all of that by the sexy Sally in Havana Grey. Yeah. It's got everything to like in my books at 2-1.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair price, isn't it? Everyone's focused on the draw at this 5 furlong track at Sandown. There was a huge bias for a long period of time to be drawn low. I don't think that's the case now. It could be the only negative for Great State, because his horse that comes from behind, all the speed looks to be high. They're going to come across to the far side rail, and he might be in a pocket. So that's the one negative for him, but there are loads of positives. Horses with closing speed are best suited by the track, and he's got that. He's boasts the highest rating in the race, as you've already touched on, based on a 108 after his most recent success. He's got the best form in the race from the Westoe Stakes last time at York. And if you look at the sectionals from that race, he ran the final furlong three lengths quicker than any other horse in the race, which might not sound like a great deal, but it really is in a sprint. Like, he was picking up powerfully, the others were fading, and he really hit the line well. And I think he's going to be very well suited to this track. Connections after his race last time at York said they might go towards the Palace of Holyrood House. Now they're going towards the Scurry. Maybe that could be seen as negative, but I think that's a positive. Finding that weaker race, still worth a good deal of money. I think Great Stakes wants to be.
I think because they went up so much and he's got an official rating 108, he probably handicapped himself out of the Palace of Holyrood House. But I think some of the horses in behind him, Pillow Talk, Michaela's Boy, in that race, they'll be the connection watching an eagle eye for a good form boost or whatever for that race, you'd imagine. And I think a lot of York Dante meeting, we're going to touch on this in the Royal Ascot preview, the Dante meeting has been a really strong indicator going forward throughout this early part of the season.
I think York form in general is a good form pointer no matter where you're going, because you get good race in there. It's always a very fair track. Every horse gets the run of the race that they want. Big connections go there, notable trainers, owners. York form is always a big positive.
Okay, so confidence behind Great Stakes TC. I would have been in agreement for all those reasons. Oisin Murphy obviously was on board at York. He's back on board again today, and I think Oisin, or I did say, I haven't need to check probably up at York, but he's normally a retained rider with Richard Varhey, but you'd say that this is a pretty top jockey booking regardless. It feels like a 2-horse race. Padika is probably just worth mentioning for George Bowie. She's been such an admirable filly, Tom, but might just want it a bit softer.
Yeah, I think so. Soft ground is where she's been seen at her best. She finished second in Group 3 in France on very soft ground. She's super consistent though, isn't she? She always runs her race, rocketed up the handicap. And on official rating, she's got a chance, but she's bumping into 2 good colts.
Okay, so Great Stake for Tom and I, Tajala for Ross and the Scurry Stakes. We are going to keep this brief because we've got a big Royal Ascot preview for you not to miss. So we're going to go quickly through naps and next best, and because you landed the nap last week, I know it was a bit of a tricky one who to go for first. But Ross, I feel like I owe you your pleasure now. Go for it. Now, and your next best.
Ross has been making you feel terrible about this for a week. We need to say this.
Yes,
this is why he's not getting the gig.
I'm in the bad book. So better win, both of them.
I feel bad I haven't got the cross on Snap. So I actually had one at Toxter, and I thought, do I dare put up the Toxter nap?
Jump racing in this heat. I mean, that's another discussion.
And it wasn't declared. So we've got 2 2-year-olds. The nap comes in the 2:30 at Bath. Unbreak My Heart, Clive Cox filly. She ran a really eye-catching race on debut, finishing 3rd behind 2 previous winners and 2 good previous winners. And she was actually a bit of an outlier for Clive Cox at the time in May. His 2-year-olds weren't running all that well at all, and she posted sort of a notably good performance, staying on really taking in the closing stages. His 2-year-olds have just hit a bit of form now. 2 winners from his last 2 runners. I think she's got bags of potential in this. And I think in the 2:30 at Bath, Unbreak My Heart will win for Clive Cox. And then another 2-year-old is the next best in the 1:35 at Chester. Invincible Friend, Tom Dascombe, had really good form at Chester over 5 furlongs and finishing second behind Hackman after a fairly slow start, and finished well. Was really well back then to up in trip at Haydock next time in the 6 furlong contest. Just never got onto it. I think good to firm ground there probably wasn't helpful. It was a decent contest, and that was also his 3rd run in 4 weeks. I just wonder whether that perhaps taking the edge off him. He's got a nice draw here on good ground at the moment. If it got faster, it'd be a bit of a concern, but if it stays genuinely good ground over this 6 furlong trip from draw 2, I think he takes all beating in that.
Okay, Bath and Chester is all over the country this weekend. Tom, what have you found?
Yeah, Sandown for me. My nap comes in the 4 o'clock, which is a mile 2 furlong maiden, which tells you how good the racing is this weekend when I'm napping in a maiden. It looks a pretty competitive and strong race on paper. There's a couple of good horses in there. Cathab for William Haggis, who ran the Wood Ditton. Cracks King, who was sent off favourite on debut on Your Weather. Middle Earth, a newcomer, son of Roaring Lions, also in there as well. But I like a horse called the Dublin Lad. He really caught my eye at Newmarket last year on debut, went straight into my mental tracker, cost 300,000, bred by Cheveley Park and bought by Saeed Sahel. He's by UBC, out of a mare called Sacre Caroline, whose other progeny is the very talented Sacred, who we'll get to on the Royal Ascot pod, I'm sure. Incidentally, Sacre Caroline is the daughter of Blame, who beat Zenyatta in the 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic.
Love it.
A Dublin Lad was super green on debut, but he ran on powerfully in the closing stages. Frankie Dettori takes the ride, step up and triple suit. So yeah, he's my nap. The next best comes in the 8:25 at Leicester. evening racing, not good. But it's a horse called Havana Heat, another son of Havana Grey. We've already talked about one in the Scurry. He was a no-show in 3 novice events to begin his career. However, he was just extremely immature. He was braking slowly, flashed his tail on occasion, generally didn't look like he knew how to race. Gelded back in March. That seems to have had the desired effect. He's finished second on his last 2 starts. First up off the layoff, he bumped into an equally well-handicapped filly. And then last time out, he was squeezed out the start at Brighton, which you can't be because it's downhill. You lose so much ground. And he was only denied 3/4 of a length back in second. With a clean trip, I think Havana Heat is overdue a victory in the 825 Leicester.
Okay, brilliant. Nice. Nap next best. I've got one nap. A horse that I was just waiting to see if is definitely running this weekend. It's a horse called Kiava for Adrian Keatley. He's booked Jodie Townend has come over for the female amateurs Queen Mother's Cup handicap. I was super impressed with this horse when he won at York in the Dante meeting, beating some nice rivals. And then he took advantage of his hurdle mark and ran at Market Racing that I'm sure Ross was watching, and had Brian Hughes on board, and he was able to back up his flat victory back over hurdles. He's massively versatile. He went up £5 the handicap, but I think having Jodie Townend on board in what is an amateur jockey's handicap is a massive benefit, and I'm looking forward to seeing him run Kiava at York on Saturday. So that's it, a real quick fly through this weekend's action, as we know the focus is Royal Ascot, but must remind all listeners, all viewers, all new SBK customers get £30 of free bets when they sign up, and bet £10 for the first time. So that is well worth taking up on, especially with Royal Ascot coming up. And before we finish and let you take a breather before you get into the Royal Ascot podcast, don't forget also we have done a really big preview with George Bowie, an in-depth stable tour ahead of Royal Ascot. That is not to be missed. He must have the most exciting group of horses heading to Royal Ascot of all trainer in this country and in Ireland. I don't know how many other trainers have at least 20 that they're hoping to take to the Royal Ascot meeting. So make sure that you get a view of that on the YouTube channel. As I mentioned, we're about to record a Royal Ascot special, so make sure you check that out too. Thanks for joining.